The superheterodyne receiver, receiver with frequency change. In the case of these receivers, the signal received by the antenna undergoes a frequency shift/conversion, because the received signal is mixed, in a mixer, with a signal generated by a local oscillator. At the output of the mixer, four frequencies result: the frequency of the input signal, the frequency of the signal generated by the local oscillator, the sum of the previously mentioned frequencies, the difference of the previously mentioned frequencies. Of these, we are only interested in the lowest frequency, respectively the difference between the frequencies, that of the radio station and that generated by the local oscillator. Thus, the frequency of the input signal is translated into a fixed frequency, called the intermediate frequency. The frequency of the local oscillator is varied in such a way that for any selected input frequency, through the input circuit, a constant frequency results at the output of the mixer. So, the tuning of the receiver is done by changing the local oscillator frequency, but also the resonance frequency of the input filter, input circuit, so that the difference between it and the frequency of the radio station is equal to the intermediate frequency. Generally, in AM radio receivers, the intermediate frequency is 455 kHz. Since the input signal now has a low frequency, its amplification can be done efficiently, using low-frequency amplifiers. Obtaining this frequency is done by fine-tuning the input circuit and the local oscillator. At the output of the mixer there are LC filters tuned to the frequency of 455 kHz and several stages of amplification. Tuning to the radio station is done by pressing a single button. The variable capacitor is double, which achieves the simultaneous tuning of the input floor circuit and that of the local oscillator. The input circuit is made up of coil B1 and variable capacitor C1. To capture the radio signal, the receiver must have an antenna. From the complex of radio waves, only a radio signal is selected, with a certain frequency, using the tuned circuit which is made up of the coil B1 and section 1 of the variable capacitor C1. The selected signal is transmitted inductively to the amplifier stage equipped with transistor V1. Coil B1 is placed on a ferrite bar that acts as an antenna. This ferrite bar concentrates the magnetic field of the radio waves, so that a strong signal will be produced in the coil of the input circuit. The variable capacitor C1 is used for simultaneous adjustment of the input filter and the local oscillator. The condenser C1 has two sections and includes semi-adjustable capacitors, in parallel with the variable sections. These semi-adjustable capacitors are used for fine adjustments or for aligning the input circuit and the local oscillator, in order to obtain the intermediate frequency of 455 kHz. Transistor V1, S9018H, has the role of radio frequency amplifier, local oscillator and mixer. The radio frequency amplifier, the signal level at the output of the input circuit is small, of the order of microvolts, μV, so it is sent to an amplification stage, equipped with the transistor V1. The local oscillator is an oscillating LC-type electronic circuit that generates a variable frequency signal at the output, obtained by changing the capacity of section 2 of the variable capacitor C1. This oscillating LC circuit is composed of the primary of the transformer B2 and section 2 of the variable capacitor C1. The obtained oscillations are applied through the capacitor C3, the transistor V1 for mixing with the signal received from the antenna, in order to obtain the intermediate frequency. The mixer, converter or frequency changer, it is a floor where the signal captured by the antenna is mixed with the signal of the local oscillator. After mixing, the frequency of the received signal, called the carrier, is transformed into a fixed frequency, which was called the intermediate frequency. Thus, on this floor, there is a change in the frequency of the received signal, but also an amplification of it. This fixed frequency is found on the secondary winding of transformer B2. Transistor V1, S9018H, has the role of radio frequency amplifier, local oscillator and mixer. Resistors R1, R2, and R13 have the role of polarizing the junctions of transistor V1. Transformers B3, B4, and B5 represent intermediate frequency filters. It only allows signals with a frequency of 455 kHz to pass. Transistors V2 and V3 are part of the two intermediate frequency amplification stages. Resistors R4, R5, R6, R7 have the role of polarizing the junctions of transistors V2 and V3. Transistor V4 has the role of detector, demodulator. Extracts the audio signal from the intermediate frequency signal. The group of components R8 and C7 are part of the automatic adjustment of the amplification. The group of components C8, C9, R9 constitutes a low-pass audio filter. Transistors V5, V6, and V7 have the role of amplifying the obtained audio frequency signal. Transformer B6 has the role of increasing the audio frequency signal to a level high enough to be amplified by the final power stage. Transformer B7 has the role of adaptation transformer between the final stage and the speaker. Diodes D1 and D2 have the role of voltage regulator. Capacitors C13, C14 and C15 have the role of cutting, discharging to ground, the radio frequency signals that can escape on the receiver power bar.
Deci există o anumită autonomie a Ucrainei în acest spune cu siguranță pământul ucrainean, ceea ce înseamnă o zonă tampon între noi și Federația Rusă, între Republica Moldova și Federația Rusă, iar dacă în cadrul unui aranjament de pace și vedeți că în Qatar s-au purtat negocieri, ceea ce ne arată Anthony Blinken a calificat drept foarte constructive discuțiile pe care le-a avut azi. Din ceea ce îi numesc dictatele americane. Ion Ștubea, corespondentul nostru la Ierusalim, explică. Este consacrată tentativelor de reluare a tentativelor de eliberare a ostaticilor israelieni și încetării focului și a Gaza, după ultima întâlnire la vârf a țărilor mediatoare și Israelului la sfârșitul la Qatarului. Cum se știe, la sfârșitul summitului de la Doha, țările mediatoare au reacționat cu un optimism prudent la rezultatele întâlnirii, dar organizația Hamas s-a desolidarizat de el, precizând într-un comunicat oficial că doar mediatoare și Israel fără participarea Hamasului. Surse de la Ierusalim au comunicat membrii delegației israeliene la negocieri. Situația Filadelfia, una dintre cele mai soluționarea tranzacției dintre Israel și organizația Hamas. Întâlnirea dintre premierul Netanyahu și ei, șeful guvernului israelian, a reconfirmat acordul Israelului cu ultima propunere de compromis a președintelui Biden, care ține seama de interesele de securitate ale Ierusalimului. El a mai adăugat că, în ciuda ultimelor divergențe de opinii înregistrate între Israel și Hamas, delegația de negociatori a Israelului va pleca miercuri la Cairo pentru un nou summit după cel din capitala Qatarului. Biroul primului ministru a definit întâlnirea dintre cei doi oameni politici de pozitiv.
A primit și acea confirmare. De acolo unde muzica lui Don Grennan se aude cu fiecare lansare nouă. Și cam tot așa a fost văzut anul trecut la festivalul Samuel. Văzut sau auzit este și concertul grupului Om la Lună de la Teatrul Național. Fidelitatea este în ochii lui Dumnezeu, dacă vreți. Infidelitatea este foarte greu de îndurat de către celălalt, de către om. Și este îngăduită, nu însă dictată. Da? Adică este îngăduită ruperea relației atunci când se ajunge la infidelitate. Două relații în același timp, cu două femei sau cu doi bărbați. Și atunci, atâta timp cât tu
din partea înșelată a existat disponibilitate de iertare